everybody. It looks like we are live. I am going to share my screen with you for this little mini workshop today. We're talking about blood sugar, cortisol, and your hormones. I had to think about which one came first. And honestly, that's the order in which we need to support them too. So it's perfect. We're going to go over why blood sugar is so important for supporting hormones and how blood sugar and cortisol, your stress hormone, actually work together to support your hormones. And whenever I see things on the internet, on Instagram or TikTok, there is a lot of kind of like oversimplified tips and explanations for especially cortisol. There's a lot of misinformation out there too around we just need to lower cortisol or get rid of cortisol and therefore get rid of stress. And I feel like there's kind of like a little bit of a running joke now at this point where it's like every single thing that we're struggling with, we can blame on cortisol. But I'll talk more about this very important hormone. We actually need it. It's not the bad guy. And it has a really bad reputation, but unnecessarily, because the goal is to actually make sure that we're supporting its natural rhythms throughout the day. So that's what we want to do. And if we're riding the blood sugar roller coaster, then cortisol is also going to be all over the place. I know that, so my internet as of lately has been kind of wonky. And so if at any time you can't hear me or see me, just let me know in the chat box. If you're watching live and you want to let me know that you can hear me okay, my video might be a little laggy, but I am going to share my screen. So you'll be paying more attention to that than to me. But I just wanted to let you know that that is the case. All right, so we're going to get started. I'm going to share my screen. Also, if you're here live and you just want to either one, just say hi in the chat box so I know you're watching, or two, if you have questions as I go through things, you can definitely let me know. And then we'll go from there. Let me just make sure my screen is shared okay. All right, it looks like we're good. I'm just going to pull up in the chat box too so I can see if anything pops up. Okay, let's get into it. All right, so we're talking about blood sugar, cortisol, and your hormones. The slides that I'm going to share are actually pulled from a workshop that we did recently called Nutrition for Healthy Hormones. And all of that, along with the resources, is packaged up for anybody who wants to dig a little bit deeper into this topic, especially eating in a way that supports your hormones and supports blood sugar. So just know that if anything seems a little incomplete with these slides, it's because it is part of a larger, super deep dive workshop. And I also will reference some resources that are available inside that workshop as well to help you actually kind of like build this stuff out. But the first thing I want to talk about before I get into all of this is that when hormones are balanced, lots of things are possible for you. The reason I always start with explaining why this is important is because I think we kind of dismiss it if we don't realize all of the things that hormones do in the body. And so if you don't know me, I'm obsessed with talking about hormones, not only as they relate to your periods and your cycle, but also as they relate to your mood, your sleep, your cravings, your energy, your weight, your hair, your skin, your nails, your appetite, literally so many things. So when hormones are balanced, here is what is possible for you. You have painless periods without PMS. We work with a lot of clients who are told that these things are normal, but they are not normal. There's a reason that they're happening. Clear skin all month long. You're able to handle stress well. You have calm and steady moods. You're not reactive or anxious. You have strong hair and strong nails. You're not breaking all the time. You have consistent energy. You fall asleep and you stay asleep. You're not even waking up to pee. You're actually hungry in the morning, so you have a healthy appetite. That is a really good sign of healthy hormones. And then you also have a normal appetite throughout the day. So you're never like hangry or craving foods, but you also acknowledge when you're hungry and then you want to eat, and it's very satisfying and enjoyable. And then also digestion. You have regular daily bowel movements and you're going to the bathroom every single day. So I always like to start with this because if anything here is like a red flag to you, or you're like, that's not the case for me, or like some of these things are off, you're definitely not alone. That's because a lot of women are struggling with hormone imbalances, but these things can all be improved. The other thing that I like to highlight with hormones and hormone symptoms is that we can't shoot the messenger, which essentially is what hormones are. They're chemical messengers that send signals all throughout your body, but they are not the problem. They're telling you that there's a problem. So if things are off with your periods, or you feel like you can't lose weight, that is a symptom. It's not the problem in itself. Or if you have other things like acne before your period, or cyclical migraines that pop up more before your period or around ovulation, if you are bloated all of the time in that week leading up to your period, if you have PMS symptoms, all those things, we can't blame the hormones themselves. We have to look deeper. We have to look under the hood to see what's going on. So think of them like your check engine light that comes on a car. Whenever that comes on, we don't just put a piece of tape over it or try to suppress it. We want to figure out what's actually going on with the car in the first place. So you pop open the hood and you look to see what's actually going on and you fix that. And then the light goes off. So when it comes to hormones, the most common root causes, and these are all of the ones that we address within our Well Nourished program, are blood sugar, which we'll talk more about today, gut health, detoxification, stress, vitamins and minerals. You know, I'm a huge fan of minerals, especially potassium, magnesium, sodium, calcium, sleep quality and quantity and schedule, movement, nervous system regulation, and also environmental toxins. All of these things influence our hormones. So this is also why one size fits all solutions do not work. And things like just removing foods or taking out dairy or taking out gluten or going low carb or intermittent fasting, taking a hormone balancing supplement, or trying to eat clean and all organic, these things don't work when it comes to improving hormones because they're not addressing the root causes. So the hormonal hierarchy is important to understand before we get into how it's all connected, because we need to understand that hormones don't work in isolation. So you don't have to understand every single hormone in the body, but there are some ones I want to highlight because these are the ones that influence really the way that you feel and the way that you look on a regular basis. So at the top of this, and I like to think of it kind of as like a pyramid, a reverse pyramid, I guess a funnel, if you will. But we have cortisol and insulin at the top. These are your stress hormones and your blood sugar hormones. So we're going to talk more about these because they are at the top of the pyramid. So they have a downstream effect on all other hormones. We work with a lot of clients who have thyroid concerns. They have been diagnosed with something like Hashimoto's, which is autoimmune related, or they have hypothyroidism, which can be fixed and resolved. It's actually not like this lifelong sentence or disease that you have to live with, but usually thyroid hormones are off as a secondary result of cortisol and insulin being off first and foremost, one or the other, or sometimes a combo of both. But your thyroid hormones control your metabolic rate. And if thyroid hormones are off, this really shows up as feeling cold all the time. If you're more hypothyroid, feeling cold all the time, constipation, thinning hair, brittle nails, maybe you can't lose weight. And then that has a downstream effect on your sex hormones because you're really not producing the energy that you need to on a regular basis. So things like ovulation are not a priority, and you're therefore not producing progesterone. It also leads to imbalances between estrogen and progesterone, which can cause a lot of period problems, and also issues with fat loss and weight distribution and recovery from workouts. But estrogen, progesterone, and testosterone are kind of like the last stop on the train. So if things are off there, then we know we need to look upstream. So no matter what, whether it's your thyroid hormones, your sex hormones, if you're like, I know some of these things are off, how do I support them? We don't start with these things. We start with actually the root causes here. And more specifically, we really start by supporting cortisol and insulin if we're actually looking at the hormones themselves. So these are the queen bee hormones, and this is where we're going to start and what we're going to dive deeper into. First, I do want to zoom out a little bit so I can show you that there is a more complete hormone supportive picture. Whenever women tell me they have done everything or tried everything, it's usually only nutrition or diet related and then exercise related and maybe some supplements. But these are the 5 steps that we focus on. And it's important to work through these in the right order as well. So this isn't necessarily chronological, except for step 1, the root cause assessment. That's something that we do from the get-go with everybody. But this is also what we're going to work through in the Well Nourished program. And we're actually running a group cohort of the Well Nourished program in the fall, starting in September. So if that's something that you're interested in, let me know, because we're only opening it to 10 women. But just to give you a better idea of the steps that we work through when supporting your hormones and your digestion, these are the ones that we want to work through. So it's not just eat less, exercise more. It's definitely not that if we want to support your metabolism, but it's also not just about like eating clean and taking some supplements. So root cause assessment, we want to get clear on why you feel the way you do. We want to see what specifically is off for you. And we like to use labs and symptoms to measure that. And then nourishing nutrition. I'm going to share the 3 core foundations for nourishing nutrition. And then we're going to go deeper into the blood sugar aspect. And then optimal digestion and detoxification. You can't have healthy hormones without having a healthy gut. Sleep and circadian rhythms is super important and often overlooked. And then a healthy stress response and nervous system support, also something that we can't skip. Okay, so the 3 foundations for hormones as it relates to your nutrition, what to focus on, these are the ones that we covered in the Nutrition for Healthy Hormones workshop. Energy balance, which is eating enough, essentially. Mineral balance, and I'm going to share a little bit more about minerals in just a second, but they are spark plugs for your hormones and also for digestive enzymes and thyroid hormones, really anything in the body that requires energy. And then blood sugar balance, which is what we're going to talk about today. So all of these are required for hormone balance. Some myths around blood sugar that I hear a lot that I just want to like get out of the way is that number 1, you have to remove carbs and sugar. Number 2 is that it only matters for somebody with diabetes or weight issues. I hear this a lot, but I mean, I've worked with clients who have no weight issues and they still are dealing with blood sugar imbalances. And then also thirdly, it's something that you have no control over. I was talking to a client earlier and she was like, well, both my parents had diabetes. And so therefore she is destined to have diabetes in her mind, but that is not the case at all. There's so much that you can do to control it. Of course, I'm talking about type 2 diabetes, not type 1, which is more autoimmune related. And then what we do want to know and just really get clear on when it comes to blood sugar balance is that it's important for everyone, no matter their age or symptoms. And I even think it's most important for children. So going back to like the very beginning, we really need to support blood sugar in our kids. And I wish I focused on it more. I remember in like middle and high school, I had so many headaches and like lack of concentration, lack of focus, low energy. And looking back, aside from eating a lot of processed foods, I was definitely on the blood sugar roller coaster on a regular basis. And then also it's really important for older adults, especially for brain health and things like that. So all across the spectrum, we need to make sure we're supporting blood sugar. It's also influenced by macronutrients, meal timing, and minerals. So these 3 M's, what I'm going to go over more in this little workshop, but there's also lifestyle factors that influence your blood sugar. So it's not just what's on your plate, it's also off your plate. And that's where we talk about the 3 S's: sunlight, sleep, and stress, and then also exercise. We can make that exercise S as well if we call it steps. So really it's steps and strength training. Those are going to be very metabolically stimulating, great for fat loss, and then also really, really important for supporting blood sugar. So what are some of the symptoms of blood sugar imbalances? Let's talk about how do you know if you're actually struggling with this stuff in the first place. If you have any obvious like cravings and headaches and things like that, then you probably know, but I'm going to highlight some obvious things and then less obvious things. So obvious is feeling tired after meals, like within 30 minutes to an hour after meals. You should feel neutral after a meal. You should eat and you should feel good. It's not like you have like this huge burst of energy, but you're also not feeling like you need to take a nap. You're waking up at 2 a.m., blood sugar drops at 2 a.m., cortisol increases. We're going to talk about that relationship in a second. If you get hangry whenever you go long periods without eating, or even like 2 hours without eating, that's a huge red flag that you are relying on carbohydrates. If you have cravings for sugar and carbohydrates, quick, easy sources of fuel. If you're somebody who says you have no willpower or you can't be around certain foods because you feel like you're going to eat a lot of them, then you actually, if we go back to that pyramid, probably have imbalances with energy, minerals, and blood sugar. If you feel nauseous, especially first thing in the morning, we see that a lot. That's a sign of low blood sugar. And then feeling anxious and stressed and just super reactive, like you are snapping at everything, or by noon, you're at work and you're just feeling super overwhelmed. That's a sign your blood sugar needs support. One of the biggest stressors on the body is this blood sugar roller coaster. And I point this out as a stressor because there's so much we deal with on a regular basis, and we say we're not stressed. We're like, I don't feel mentally stressed. I feel good, but your body is perceiving stressors otherwise. Basically, anything that comes from the environment that makes your body not feel safe, like going for a 5-mile run is a stressor on the body. And that's fine as long as you're recovering from it well and you're fueling your body with food well and you're sleeping well. But that's a stressor on the body. Doing a cold plunge is a stressor on the body. And then obvious stressors we think of, like work or finances or relationships, those are more obvious. But the sneaky one is these swings of blood sugar imbalances. So you go high highs and low lows, and you can see the different symptoms you'll experience on either end. So high blood sugar can lead to fatigue, irritability, also increases insulin, and insulin resistance can lead to a lot of issues that I'll talk about in a minute. Increased storage. So your body's in storage mode. So if fat loss is your goal, it's going to be a lot harder. And it also, when it's high, thinks that it should be responding to a stressor. But if you're not, you're just literally sitting there doing nothing. The stressor doesn't exist. Then that's where we're kind of in this like biological mismatch. And then low blood sugar, which can happen if you don't have the things to help stabilize your blood sugar after that high, is you have intense cravings, you get hangry, you have fatigue, headaches, and it triggers that stress response, which increases cortisol in the body. And that's also when you feel like you have literally no willpower and you like want to eat whatever is in front of you. So if you can relate to either one of these high highs or low lows, you can put it also in the chat if anything resonates with you. I'm curious if you're watching the replay too, if any of this is like definitely sounding like you. Okay, so the relationship between blood sugar and cortisol is important to understand, again, because blood sugar imbalances in themselves are a stressor. So if your goal is to reduce stressors to help support other symptoms, right? Like, you know that stress is making your skin worse or your digestion worse, or that's the reason that you can't lose weight or can't recover from workouts or are waking up at 2 a.m. This is how it's actually connected. So blood sugar drops. And when that happens, your body is like, SOS, what is happening? I need sugar in my blood ASAP. So it increases, or it signals the response of cortisol to increase cortisol. And then that increase in cortisol signals the body to release sugar into the bloodstream. And then what happens after that is insulin increases to pull that blood sugar out of the bloodstream. And so it's this huge roller coaster with insulin, with cortisol, and with these high highs and low lows. I'll talk more about that in a second. I have a little slide, but first we're going to talk about cortisol. So cortisol is a stress hormone, and it has a downstream impact on all the other hormones. We know that from that hormonal hierarchy. But when it's too high for too long, or it's too low for too long, a lot of people don't talk about that. This is when it can lead to issues. And we can see this. This is why we do cortisol testing through urine or saliva, not through blood, because that only gives you one point in time. And we want to measure it throughout the day. This cortisol pattern aligns with your circadian rhythm and light and dark exposure, which is why that is also a really important piece of our program. So we can see on the top, it's on the high end. This person is just in chronic fight or flight, go, 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 go. And then on the bottom, we can see that it's really tanked. And this person has been probably go, go, go for a really long time, but now their body just isn't producing as much cortisol in total. And so they're trending at the lower end and they feel really tired all the time. Usually when you're at that lower end too, you're going to crave more salt and you're going to have more like immune related issues as well. So what all of this leads to is poor digestion, lower thyroid hormone, because again, that downstream effect, it like slows everything else down. which then also leads to lower progesterone, which leads to PMS and mood swings and a lot of period problems, fertility challenges, things like that. So you can go through this checklist as well of high cortisol versus low cortisol. You might have a combination of both. You can overlap because you can have high cortisol at night when it should be low, and you can also have low cortisol in the morning whenever it should be high. So understand that this is just saying you're basically dysregulated. So high cortisol, you're wired but tired, so you can't fall asleep. You're not hungry in the morning, midsection weight gain, puffy face, flushed face. That's also related to thyroid and liver. You get shaky if you miss a meal. You have headaches. You sweat easily, like you're sitting, not doing anything, you start sweating. Cravings for carbs. You feel anxious and irritable. You have a hard time getting pregnant or staying pregnant. Irregular periods, high blood pressure, and then hair loss. Low cortisol end. You get dizzy when you stand, so you go from lying to standing and you get dizzy easily. Low blood pressure, low blood sugar, difficulty recovering from workouts. You feel like you got hit by a bus and then you're sore for like days after. Frequent injuries. Maybe you always seem to hurt something like your shoulder, your knee, your back. Not a literal injury where you like stub your toe. You have brain fog and difficulty concentrating. You find it hard to get going in the morning, so you're really slow to start. Chronic fatigue. You're irritable and reactive. Low libido, lack of motivation. You have a lot of allergies, maybe histamine responses. You've pinpointed that to reacting to certain foods or maybe having really bad seasonal allergies, skin issues, eczema, things like that. Cravings for salt specifically, so your body really needs sodium. And then you have a hard time losing weight. Also, low body temperatures and getting cold easily. This is both low cortisol and thyroid related. So an easy way to measure this right away is just taking your basal body temperature tomorrow. And if it's below 97.5, then we know you have some cortisol and thyroid issues to work on. So the other effects of this high cortisol, especially when it's high for too long, is again, it suppresses other things. So it slows your thyroid function, which slows your metabolism, which slows everything else. And then also high cortisol and high stress is going to deplete your vitamins and minerals. This is why we test minerals with clients and we can see how their body is actually uniquely responding to stress. And when we don't have adequate vitamins and minerals, we know that that can lead to a lot of other health symptoms and concerns. So again, this relationship, your blood sugar drops, your cortisol increases, which then gets blood sugar back up, and then insulin releases. And this is where we look at the other hormones. So this roller coaster can lead to symptoms like PMS, PCOS, acne, stubborn weight, and chronic fatigue. And these are the ones that we see almost as, again, the last stop on the train. And people are like, well, what can I do to fix my PMS or PCOS? We got to look upstream at the blood sugar and the cortisol and what got you here in the first place. Acne and high insulin is also very common. High insulin we see with people who are having a hard time losing weight. And then, of course, chronic fatigue and overall more stress in the body causing digestive issues, and chronic inflammation is going to make you feel absolutely terrible in a lot of areas. So we do not want this high cortisol, high insulin combo. It's like the worst one. Or a low cortisol, high insulin combo. That's also not enjoyable. So what are some things that throw your blood sugar off? If you're like, I don't even eat a lot of sugar, I don't know why this is relevant for me. There are a lot of things you might not be doing or you might be missing that can throw off your blood sugar. So not eating enough protein, especially at breakfast. Inconsistent meal timing, you're snacking and grazing all day long on one end, or on the other end, you're going too long without eating, or it's just super inconsistent. You have breakfast at 8 a.m. one day and 10 a.m. the next day. You have lunch at 12 p.m. one day, 2 p.m. the next day. It's all over the place. Lack of specific minerals. I'm going to talk about those in a second, but we need minerals to actually use insulin and get it into the cell to help lower blood sugar. If you're eating the wrong types of carbs, so we don't want to go low carb, but we do want to make sure that we're getting the right types of carbs at the right time of day in the right amounts, which is super bio individual. Eating low fat foods, which usually have sugar added back to them and usually in the form of like artificial sugar nowadays. So that can lead to a lot of blood sugar issues. Poor sleep, that can throw off your blood sugar. Even just one night of poor sleep can put you in that pre-diabetic state. Lack of sunlight, doing tons of cardio and no strength training. I would rather you walk throughout the day and strength train like 3 to 4 days a week than try to do a cardio session every single day. And then other hormones that influence blood sugar. I wanted to mention this because changes in estrogen and progesterone throughout your cycle can influence your blood sugar as well, which is why we feel differently depending on where we are in our cycle. And then more obviously, when we're in perimenopause and menopause, things change with your insulin and your thyroid hormones. So if you've ever noticed these things, so cravings after a poor night's sleep, because you're in that almost pre-diabetic state, if you're irritable when you go long without eating, if you feel hungry or you want sweets right after a meal, that's a huge red flag. If you feel tired after a meal, if you have more cravings after or leading up to your period, those are from changes in your blood sugar handling as it relates to estrogen and progesterone. And then if you are hungry or you have more cravings after doing a lot of cardio, maybe it's like a day where you go for a 5-mile run and you feel like you want to eat everything but the kitchen sink all throughout the day. So these are all examples of kind of some of these mistakes actually showing up in real life. So if you can relate to any of them, you're not alone. And also feel free to let me know. My big one was feeling like I just could not eat enough whenever I was training for marathons. And I was always so hungry. If only I knew that just cutting back on my running and adding in more walking would help with those cravings, I would have done it sooner. Okay, so when blood sugar is stable, we have stable energy, less cravings, balanced hormones, stable mood, improve cortisol levels, and easier fat loss. So this is the goal. This is why we focus on this stuff. The things that we focus on your plate to support blood sugar are the 3 M's: macros, meal timing, and minerals. And then we're not going to get into these today, but there are things off of your plate. So the 3 S's: sleep, sunlight, and stress. And then, like I said, I could also add like a steps and strength training to this if we wanted to talk about movement. And even for these M's, we could add another one around menstrual cycle that would be helpful. But let's talk about macronutrients first. So what we can do with our meals is PFC for 3. So protein, fat, and carbs every single meal. You'll customize these amounts as it works for you, listening to your biofeedback. That's important. And this is also what we can coach you through. So you actually understand the way that you should feel and how to adjust things. And then times 3 is for 3 solid meals. We're not skipping meals. We're not trying to save calories. We're eating a breakfast, a lunch, and a dinner, and then a bridge snack in between if we need one. So macro essentials, we have protein, carbs, and fats. I feel like a lot of people are familiar with macronutrients, not so much with minerals, which is why I'm going to talk about them, but we need each one. And I wanted to just kind of highlight some general, very, very general recommendations for where you can start if you're thinking about amounts, because some people have absolutely no clue. Also, on the other end, some people have been tracking like to the T for way too long. But with protein, we want to focus on quality animal proteins. These are going to be the most bioavailable, meaning you get all of the nutrients from them, and super nutrient dense. We usually recommend around 0.8 to 1 gram per pound of body weight. If you're like, I don't want to think about that, just aim for 100 grams to start. If you need help figuring out what this looks like, we break this all down in our program, and we can definitely teach you how to build this out in your day in a way that feels super realistic. It's actually much easier than people make it out to be too. So carbohydrates is the other one that is very important for thyroid health, adrenal health, so your cortisol, and also for sex hormone production, especially progesterone. So minimum 150 grams. This is like on the lower end for menstruating women. You need more if you're more active or pregnant or nursing. And you really do have to customize your sources. Some people do better with sources like grains, so like rice and oats, and then other people do better with more mineral-rich sources like potatoes and fruits. So that's something that you have to definitely customize, mix and match, make it work for you. And then lastly is fats, which are the building blocks for hormones. If we want healthy hormones, we obviously need the building blocks, especially sex hormones that come from cholesterol. And then 60 grams is the very, very minimum. I say usually like 75 grams. Especially for ovulation, which is important for healthy cycles. So just general numbers to keep in mind. You have to customize this for you because you also need to make sure that you're meeting your calorie needs, and those macronutrients will change based on your calorie needs. So the point I really want to drive home is that we need all 3. It's not about going to extremes or cutting out carbs or cutting out fat, or usually cutting out protein comes from trying to cut out red meat or go vegetarian or things like that that don't work long term for our hormones or our female physiology. Another thing I like to think about is why they're important. It really gives you an incentive to actually focus on each one. And I know, for example, if I sit down with a meal that doesn't have any protein with it, like it was just a big bowl of pasta and some vegetables, I know that I would feel hungry an hour later, or I'd feel like something's missing and I'm not satisfied. And I'd probably end up like snacking and grazing on like sweet stuff or something later on. So protein, it is important for stimulating metabolism, for thyroid hormones especially, and also for your mood, because we get to, so building block or precursor to neurotransmitters is amino acids, and we get amino acids from protein. Carbohydrates, we need these for the conversion of thyroid hormones, which is so interesting because I see, at least back in the day, it's not as popular now. And the people who I followed who were low carb or keto for like weight loss or thyroid health, it only lasted for so long. And now they're like, oh, I actually do need carbohydrates. And we can see it with labs too. For women who have been low carb for too long, usually it's slowing down their thyroid hormone production. So we need it for the conversion of free T4 to free T3. And then we also need it for progesterone production as well. And carbohydrates come with a lot of vitamins and minerals because it's from a lot of like plant sources and roots, root vegetables, potatoes, things like that. So we need it for our digestion as well, especially with that good gut bacteria that we're trying to feed. And then for fats actually help to lower inflammation in the body. Also help us to absorb fat-soluble vitamins, makes sense, but vitamins A, D, E, and K. So if you're low in vitamin D, and we don't recommend supplementing with high doses of vitamin D, especially for a long period of time. If you're low, we want to know why. Usually it's a fat absorption issue. And then they're also building blocks for sex hormones. Like I said, we need cholesterol to actually produce sex hormones. So this is the balanced meal formula. If you want to screenshot this, it's a very like overview of different source examples. We have a more extensive one in the Nutrition for Healthy Hormones. If you want to purchase that, it comes with a guide that literally breaks down like a more exhaustive, complete list of protein, fats, and carb sources. And then, of course, non-starchy veggies. But we really want to build this out in a way that's going to feel satisfying, also feels easy to throw together, and is enjoyable. And we can do it with each meal and also with snacks. The second piece that we want to consider is your meal timing. So we have macros, then we have meal timing, and these two go together because first we want to balance our meals, protein, carbs, and fats, because if you're higher in carbohydrates, lower in fat, lower in protein, and you're trying to space your meals out like this, it's going to feel really hard. You're going to feel hungry in between your meals. So we balance those meals out first, and then we work on spacing our meals 3 to 4 hours apart. And on the other end, we don't want to be snacking and grazing all day long. That's also going to keep you on the blood sugar roller coaster. And also just your body's going to be constantly relying on carbohydrate as a fuel source because it's a quick, easy fuel source. And we want those kind of like logs on the fire, if you will, with healthy fats and also with protein to keep you satisfied. So an example of a schedule, you would obviously customize this for you, but breakfast is around 8 a.m. Then you're going 3 to 4 hours to lunch around noon. Maybe you have a snack around 4 p.m. and then you're doing dinner at 6 p.m. I always do a dessert after dinner as well. And I hate going to bed on an empty stomach or hungry. I don't recommend that. That's a huge stressor on the body. So if you even want to add a snack after dinner, you can do that as well. And of course, you're keeping your macros balanced and you're making sure that you're eating enough with each meal to keep you full for 3 to 4 hours. This is a day of blood sugar balancing mistakes that I like to highlight as some examples because some people will be like, oh, well, I'm already, doing this, or I think I eat enough protein. But I like to highlight where things can be missing so you can see just opportunity for improvement. But as one example, I'll share this one. So with breakfast, if you're doing like an avocado toast and it only has 1 egg, it's only 7 grams of protein. So we need like 30-ish more grams of protein there. So we would need to add more protein to this. And then, of course, you have carbs with the sourdough, fat with avocado, and we could even add some of those non-starchy veggies in here somewhere. Lunch, a salad with chicken breast. I see salads a lot for lunch options, or maybe like a wrap. And usually they're lower in protein because you're not getting enough with that salad. And then a lot of raw vegetables like that are going to be more difficult to digest. So if you're struggling with digestive issues or you're already under stress and you don't have the digestive enzymes to break things down properly, that's going to be much more difficult. And then also, this is completely lacking in carbohydrates, obviously. And then snacks is an almond, which is totally fine. But just as an example, how we're kind of like snacking because we're not getting enough for our lunch. And then dinner, like the pasta with veggie situation, low in protein. So this is like an overall low in protein kind of day. This second example, if you're just having like coffee or a little yogurt for breakfast, this is just, you're not starting your day with that blood sugar balancing meal. Some habits like outside of food that contribute to blood sugar imbalances. And this is kind of like a day in the life of wrecking your hormones, basically. Waking up and checking your phone right away. So, like instant blue light exposure, which we don't want. We want to get natural sunlight. You go out for a run and then you sit and you work for 8 hours and maybe you don't get a lot of sunlight. That's a more extreme version. But if you're running and then you're just sitting down the rest of the day, overall movement is going to be pretty low. And obviously, there's no like strength training sort of routine in here. And then you get home, you don't have any downtime for yourself. You're kind of just like doing stuff, maybe running errands, socializing. You're not getting any sunlight throughout the day, which isn't ideal for circadian rhythms. And then we scroll on our phone and check social media and watch TV until we go to bed. So then we have all that blue light at night. This is obviously like a more extreme example, but something I like to point out as it relates to some of the lifestyle stuff and just being in that chronic go, 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 high cortisol state and not really focusing on blood sugar balancing aspects. So when it comes to minerals, like I mentioned before, they impact how our bodies actually make insulin, use insulin, and then take up glucose into our cells. So it's a huge missing piece for people who are like, well, I'm balancing my macronutrients and I feel like my meal timing is good. Usually they're lacking these minerals. And this is why we use the hair tissue mineral analysis. It's also included in the Well Nourished program for this fall cohort, which I'm really excited about. But the biggies that we need are magnesium, sodium, potassium, and calcium. Sodium, potassium, and calcium we can get through food sources. I like to do kind of like mineral mocktail sort of mixes. So we're getting it through our beverages, but we can also focus on a lot of food sources as well. And then for magnesium, everybody's a little bit different here, but supplementation is usually required to some extent, especially if we've already burned through a lot of magnesium and we need to replete it. But we can't supplement with magnesium if sodium is low. So that's why I like using an HTMA test, and we can figure out which one to bump up first. If you don't have this mineral magic guide, it is posted in the Nourish Her group, or you can DM me on Instagram if you want it. But this has a lot of fun mineral mocktail recipes and then also some food options and ideas for calcium, potassium, sodium, and magnesium. So definitely grab that, and that'll walk you through some things that you can start with. You could literally do a mineral mocktail tomorrow and stay consistent with that, and you should start to notice a difference. The immediate improvements that clients notice and I notice for me is energy, skin, and cravings. Those are, which all reflect blood sugar stability. But those are some of the biggies that you can expect right away. And also, if you're using sea salt, that helps with digestion and bloating, especially. So the bonus tip, this is like the menstrual cycle, the menstrual cycle, is adjusting your macronutrients and your calorie intake for blood sugar balance with your cycle. So if you're not tracking your cycle, you should definitely start. And if you need help with that, we can definitely show you how to do it. It's not just using like a predictor app or a calendar. You're actually taking your basal body temperature. But basically, if we're oversimplifying it, you have the first half of your cycle, which is the follicular phase, and the second half of your cycle, which is the luteal phase. This happens after ovulation. And this is also how you know exactly when your period is going to come, because you know exactly when ovulation happened because you confirm that. But in the first half of your cycle, you have higher estrogen, which means you have a better carb tolerance. And if you have fat loss goals, this is a really good time. It'll feel easier to try to pursue those fat loss goals because you also have more energy and you can support your body without feeling like you're burning it out, basically. Whereas if you try to do that same amount of activity in the luteal phase, you'll feel a little bit less tolerant to it and probably more burnt out. And then your period comes and it's actually really terrible. It feels horrific. So we don't want that. Second half of your cycle with your luteal phase, you have higher progesterone, which is what increases your body temperature and therefore increases your metabolism, which is why you have more cravings and hunger. And then we also have a better utilization of fat. So we can go lower carb, higher fat in this phase. And also just making sure that we're meeting our calorie needs. So some tweaks and adjustments that you can make. Okay, so so those are basically the M's. We touched on minerals, meal timing, and macronutrients. I mentioned this Nutrition for Healthy Hormones workshop that we did last week, and I basically packaged all of the resources up for you. If you want to purchase this, I'll put the link below this video, or you could just DM me on Instagram. But you'll essentially have all of the resources to build out these blood sugar balancing meals. So you have a hormone meal balancing template, Nutrition for Hormones guide. So it goes over blood sugar balance, minerals, also finding your unique calorie needs and your calorie sweet spot. I give you an actual worksheet to help you figure that out. Cycle tracking guide, finding your calorie needs. I mentioned that. Hormone supportive recipes as well to kind of give you some inspiration if you like following recipes. Mineral rich smoothies, that mineral magic guide that I mentioned, and then also a PMS toolkit if that's something that you struggle with. We know that your blood sugar and your cortisol needs some support, but also there are some tips in there of things you can do just immediately to help improve those PMS symptoms. So that is something that is available. It'll be $47 until the end of this week, and then we're going to increase the price, probably add a couple things to it at that point, but you'll have all of that available to you as soon as you buy it. So I want to also lastly just highlight some of the things that we work through together in the Wellnurse program. If you know you want support with this and you want to take it to the next step, instead of kind of DIYing or piecemealing things together, obviously start with what you can and what you know. But if we're looking at, so this program is really to help women who want to support their energy and their digestion and balance their hormones and actually know how to fuel their body in a way that is going to support them for the long term, not just like a 75 hard or some sort of challenge. You're genuinely addressing your root cause, figuring out where your symptoms are coming from and how to address them in the right way that applies for you. So you got a combination of one-on-one and education and also group coaching and community sessions as well. But everybody starts with that root cause assessment, and we use blood labs and we use a hair tissue mineral analysis to really figure out where your imbalances are and what needs support. And then we work on actually fueling your metabolism. So going over those three important components of blood sugar balance, eating enough, replenishing with minerals. And then we talk about working with your cycle. And if you are on hormonal birth control, we talk about how to support your body on birth control. And then also, if you want to come off, we also give you the resources to transition off successfully. If you're not on it and you just want to be more in tune with your cycle, then this is definitely going to be helpful for you. But we also want to support our 24-hour cycle. So we want to support cortisol and we want to support the monthly cycle. So both of those are important. And then nourishing your gut and liver. If you have digestive issues, this is obviously very, very important. But even if you don't and you have issues around skin or energy, you still have to support your gut and liver. So this includes how you eat, how you eliminate, aka going to the bathroom. Are you going every single day? And then also some targeted supplement recommendations that we'll make. And then building stress resiliency, last but not least. You can't get rid of all stress, but you can improve your body's ability to respond to it. And there's a lot that's within your control that you can actually reduce. We don't realize it, but even just, for example, waiting until 11 a.m. to eat, that is so much unnecessary stress on your body. Or doing a lot of blue lights at night and scrolling on your phone before you fall asleep. Again, an unnecessary stress. So we can work on some things that are within your control. And this also includes figuring out the movement that's necessary for you, not too much, but also enough to support your goals. And then building in nervous system tools as well, things that you can kind of sprinkle into your day that will help you to get out of that fight or flight state and back into that parasympathetic, I feel safe kind of state. So I wanted to share that overview so you have a better idea of all the things that we really can get into. And it's, again, not just like a yes, no food list kind of situation. It really is meant to be super comprehensive and really addresses the root cause. Alrighty. So unsharing my screen just so I can show my face one last time. If you're watching the replay and you have questions, put them in the chat and I will be able to come back and see them. Hopefully the internet wasn't too terrible. It still says it's unstable. So we will do the best with what we have here. If you are interested in grabbing one of those 10 spots for the well-nourished cohort in the fall, we start in September. That's kind of when we'll have our kickoff call, but we are doing an early enrollment period, meaning that if you sign up before then, you will have an onboarding session with me, kind of like your customized preparation session where we'll go over how you're going to get the most out of the program. And also, you will be able to get your hair tissue mineral test in early so you can get those results back sooner, and we'll be able to customize things for you from the beginning. And then we also have a VIP option as well that we're offering to order GI map stool tests. So that's something else that I've never done before. That's only been with one-on-one clients, but with the VIP option, you'll be able to get a GI map stool test. So highly recommend that if you are struggling with chronic digestive issues or skin issues, or you feel like you've already done almost everything and you want some more answers as to what's going on, because your gut influences everything. So that's really HTMA and GI map tests are two of the core functional labs that we like to use in addition to blood work and can be super helpful. All right, so that is all. I am going to sign off now. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me and I will see you here next time. Bye.